Yep, and we're live, guys. The end of the first innings, and Australia what ended up with 260 odd. I've completely forgotten what their score was. 276. Yeah, stand corrected. 276 is what Australia has ended up with. Shami ended his innings, or rather his spell, with a fifer, and Gurkirat Paji, as you can see clearly, is not amused with it one bit. Shardul did not have the greatest of games, and so Nikhil and I thought basically, what we would do. We would just ask Gurkirat, what do you think about Shardul and Shami? Then mute ourselves and just leave. But yeah, I mean, a mixed bag, so to say, for the Indian bowlers today. There was also a brief spell of rain, and thankfully it didn't delay the game too much. But yeah, let's cut to the chase. Nikhil, what did you make of today's bowling effort? Today's Indian bowling effort, that is. How do you rate it? And who do you think were the standout performers? I know Shami did take a fifer, but barring his new ball spell, you know, an argument can be made that he didn't really do that well in the end. But yeah, so what do you think?
No, I think it's something that we've known in the past, and I think India began decently. The great, always great to get that destructive batter out early because then they are the guys who can set the tone for the side and give them the cushion in the power play itself of those 30-40 extra runs. So I think that's where India did well. Just it's just shambles with the catching. Not to wanting to point out anybody singularly, but the catching has been a letdown for a while now, and I have no problem if tough chances are not taken, but you cannot drop sitters. That's I think the least that's expected of you, uh, because it cost not just Shardul a wicket and the narrative for the rest of the game, but also Warner was on 14 then. You allowed him to get into a good stand, and then Smith started to look good, and just you got Warner at the right time. And the good thing was you got Smith also not too long after that. So I think that was a good thing for India that they were able to strike regularly because if you see the Australian batting order, there are one, two, three, four, five people who got over 30 and two more who got over 25 over 20. So it just tells you a lot of people got starts, but the pitch wasn't such where you can just really hit through the line. It was stopping a bit. You saw KL struggle at times to collect because the ball wasn't carrying to him. There were a few that just misbehaved. So very keen to see how it plays under lights because I don't think this is the usual Mohali deck. Usually it comes onto the bat much better. At least it gets to bat better. So very keen to see because there is still an hour to go before the lights come on and take full effect. So it should still remain a bit tacky, a bit two pace in that nature. So India's start will be crucial because again, twilight period, as Paji said, you may or you may not get the moment. So that will really set the tone because they have a good score, still at 276. If it remains tacky, it's a very good score.
Good points, those. And also, like Nikhil mentioned, Australian batting lineup, if you look at it, barring Marsh, Abbott, and Zampa, everyone scored in excess of 20. And two of those batted number 10 and number 11. Goes on to show the kind of depth. And also, this is a discussion Gurkirat and I had off there, where I personally would rather have, 8 or 9 of my batters scoring in excess of 30, 40, getting those starts and contributing, than have just one batter going the full distance, scoring a century and taking his team through. Gurkirat had different thoughts. So Gurkirat, yeah, you can also mention why you think having a set batter playing the death overs makes more sense.
Yeah, on pitches like this, it definitely makes more sense because, like Nikhil was mentioning, it wasn't as easy to hit through the line. So you needed someone who could be set and take toll of the bowling then. Having said that, I don't think it can be a blanket statement that you want all of your batters contributing or one batting through the line because it eventually comes down to maximizing the resources. If the deck allows for batters to come in and hit and you know come up with more than par innings, so be it. But if the deck is difficult, then you need someone to bat through. And I think this philosophy works far more in T20s as opposed to ODI cricket because the longer duration of the game essentially means that the pitch really comes into play a lot more. There will be some variation. So that's what I feel. And yeah, I mean, I felt that Australia actually left a few runs out there. They could have added maybe 15 runs more, if not more than that, because India had only 5 bowlers. Uh, maybe Green's innings will come under scrutiny if India go on to win, and it's a tight chase, because I felt like Nikhil was saying that when that second wicket partnership was happening, everything was under Australia's control. Then Warner got out trying to maximize a matchup that he felt he could take on. Smith got to a good delivery, but from there on, I just felt that Green was also struggling to get adjusted to the pace of the deck, and maybe he wanted to take his time. He probably, you could say that he had intense issues. I'm not sure, but that innings really meant that there was also pressure on Labuschagne net, because he had started off well. But at that period, I think might just come back to bite Australia later on. But it's still a good test. It allows them to find out that who's capable of what. Because like I said in the preview, the result of these three games doesn't really matter as much as trying out players does.
Fair
Yeah, I
point.
think
That
just to add to Paji's point there, it's also one of the perks of sometimes taking a lot more time than you think, or you feel that okay, it's not a deck where I am able to hit through the line, so let me take some time. But then the challenge there lies into quickly assess the conditions that okay, I've played out 20 balls, I've played out 30, 40 balls. When is the time when I make that change? Because and you see that lineup has a few such players in Cam Green or even Marcus Jones, who I feel we talked about in the preview, that sometimes when they are set, they just look far more different in once they are set and they have the pace of the deck in their minds rightly. So I think that's where the strike rate also will pop up, that 59 as opposed to everybody being about 65, 70 more than that. So just one of those perks of wanting a batter to keep going if do not get stuck at one end in that sense.
fair, and also in his defense, again, a very unfortunate run out that. Fortunately for Rahul though, like Pranav Anand says, अगर शार्दुल आज विकेट कीपिंग करता के तो केल की तरह ही करता, because this, I mean, it was very very. I don't know what the right word is, how to describe his keeping performance today, but I'm pretty sure KL himself won't be too proud of it. What he'll be proud of is the fact that it did end up in two dismissals, one being Manas and the other, of course, being Green. But moving on, like apart from Rahul's keeping, would you actually choose Ishant as your primary keeper in case he is a part of the 11? There was a chat around this as well in the comms box during the game, where if Ishant is playing, shouldn't he be keeping instead of fielding? How do you look at this, or do you rather give KL more game time ahead of the World Cup? Nikhil, you could go first.
Yeah, I think the problem here is Kishan isn't starting in the 11. So if Kishan was starting, then you would have wanted that okay, Kishan takes the gloves. But that is the very reason that KL is keeping is because he's starting over Ishan. So that is a simple reason there where you don't have Kishan keeping the wickets. And if the long term option is for KL to keep, then that's what's happening. So I don't think there is a straight option there unless uh, I don't think KL getting out of the side. He's the captain, so I don't see there is a scope of him not playing as well. So it's just as it is, and I just feel it was a off game for him. Uh, in the start, I felt it wasn't that great. Let's see how the other keeper goes today. Sometimes you just have days or venues where it just doesn't work for you. Same thing I think happened with Shardul, where a lot of things he tried. He looked good. He got it for a boundary, then beat the bat. Got it for a boundary, then beat the bat. But not your day.
Basically, a typical Shardul spell. Yeah,
Yeah,
just that the wickets column not reflecting it, unfortunately.
yeah.
But a lot of our viewers right now are commenting about Australia's batting and how they weren't, just as aggressive as they were say against the South Africans in the previous draw. Pranav Anand, he says Australia were over aggressive versus South Africa, and today they were slightly conservative. Ash came back well, but they didn't attack him enough. So, Gurkirat, let's start with you. What do you think of Ash's spell today, and do you think he what I mean, we've already discussed whether he warrants a comeback or not, and all of us are on the same page that he probably didn't. Washi should have maybe been ahead of him in the pecking order in terms of being given a chance. But now that Ashwin has gotten a chance, do you think he's grabbed it with both hands?
Uh, I, I think to say he's grabbed it with both hands would be would be really saying that this was an outstanding spell. This was a spell of two halves. First 5 overs he had gone for 30 runs, six overs, 36, and then he ended up with one for 47. Again, I feel Green struggling in that period also helped Ashwin. It helped Ashwin bowl those dots, which meant that Manas had to take that extra chance. Ideally, Manas should have been out caught, but he ended up being stumped. So again, what Ashwin did in that spell, or that in the second half of that spell, is something that we have seen enough of him even do in T20s, where he's able to bowl those defensive lines and figure out that if a batter is looking out for a boundary opportunity, don't give them that. Just build on that pressure. So that is something that Ashwin has always had the skill. But we saw that in the first half of the spell when he was trying to bowl slow, trying to create wicket taking opportunities, it didn't really work out that well. However, for that you have to give credit to the Aussie batters too. They also took their chances. So it was a combination of a lot of factors, match situation, how the pitch was behaving. Because like Nikhil mentioned, and I think everyone would agree that this wasn't a typical Mohali deck where the ball was just coming onto the bat straight away. There was slight grip on offer, which is why I feel that Australia might just bowl Matthew Short a few more overs than what they would have liked, given how the pitch has behaved.
Oh,
I think you are
classic!
on
You are
mute.
a mute. Classic, classic.
Jeez, my bad. Apologies. Just a follow-up question from Pranav on that. Is it fair to judge Ash's performance today? There's no way he's playing as a second spinner in any game. I'm more interested in seeing him bowl in tandem with Kuldeep. He's never done that. Again, this is sort of similar to the chat Nix and I were having just before this the live stream started, where I was genuinely surprised, in fact, even shocked by the fact that Ashwin does not have a single fifer, having played 117 ODIs. And I was just telling Nix the same, and Nix was like, because leg spinners को ज्यादा wickets मिलता है and all of that. And I felt कि यार उसने चहल और कुलदीप के साथ तो उतना ज्यादा खेला नहीं है, तो फिर किसको मिल रहा है? जडेजा को भी फाइफर मिल चुका है, अगर आप देखोगे तो even Washi has a four, okay, not a five fair. But so yeah, Nix, you can take this question up. What do you think?
No, I don't think it will be fair even if you take the two games out because it's very very small sample size, and again, as Padi said, a lot. And I think that is something that we'll have to keep in mind going forward when we are judging anybody on the basis of a single game. That uh, there is the reason why we all say that we want a larger sample space to take a call, because then you are evening out the factors of luck, opponent, venue, all of that. Because just today, as Padi said, there is Cam Green slowdown, the situation. Ashwin were more than happy to be wanting to be able to keep runs down because that was India's first target, that you keep runs down and then you see what happens. So just one or two games will not give you a clear idea. But yeah, what could give you a clear idea is what was the role that the management gave to Ash, that what did they expect from him from this game. That okay, the role was stay at 1 for 40. He did that. Great, you got what you wanted. So I think that's how I look at it. What is something that they wanted? Like with Shami's wickets, most of his wickets came bowl a good ball to Marsh. Smith was probably over ambitious, but still a good ball. He did not leave the stumps. That is his strength. So those things are what I'm looking at in terms of ticking boxes. That's how I'll want to judge. So two games I don't think will be enough. Even if it takes 3-3 in all of these games, doesn't mean that he'll do well against every opponent on flat decks. So lots to go, a longer rope needed, and more games needed for us to take a call in that manner.
Of course. And neural hacks with Vasan, meanwhile, just like many other viewers, who want to know about KL Rahul, the keeper. Guys, we did speak briefly about him, but let's just take this question. He says KL has been a very good keeper and kept well in the Asia Cup too, and also in the past. Don't want to jump to conclusions by this match. What do you think, Gurkirat? You can take this up. What do you think? Would it be? Is this a fair assessment, or do you think KL is yet to prove himself as a keeper in international cricket?
No, he's done well. Before we were coming on air, I said that there would be 2 points of discussion after today's game. One, that if KL's in the 11, should he really keep on the basis of this game? And the other is the one that is always doing around, that should India play Shami ahead of Shardul. So games like today will provide a lot of fodder to those who actually feel Shami as a third pacer makes sense. So yeah, these two conversations will happen. I I really felt that today was a very bad game for Shardul. I don't think he's bowled as badly in recent times. My feeling is it had got something to do with the humid conditions, because we saw him, lose a bit of steam, call for drinks in between. And even Shami early on went off for a bit because it was that hot and India were only playing with five bowlers. So that could have been a factor. And yeah, one of those rare days where luck wasn't really with him. Usually he has, a fair share of luck, but it was those days where he did not really have any luck.
Interesting. And Pranav, once again, I'll have to segue into all of you guys making sure that you like the stream. 43 of you are watching, but then thoda luck hum pe bhi barsao yaar. Sirf 10 ही likes hain. Let us get that likes number to also around 40, just as many viewers as they are right now. But KL the keeper, of course, might not have done greatly today. But KL the captain is someone who a lot of people will be looking at keenly, because after the World Cup, we don't know. How, as things stand, Shubman Gill is also there. There's also KL. There's also Hardik Pandya. When it comes to the limited over setup, they have multiple captaincy options. Speaking of which, if we look at this KL captaincy graphic, sorry, neural hacks, let me hide your comment. Yep. So, Nikhil, what do you make of this? First three losses, first three games as captain, he lost, and then the next four games he's won, but all of them have been against the likes of Zimbabwe and Bangladesh. Finally, he's against a top quality side. Again,
I think
sample size
two.
उतना बड़ा नहीं है.
I think same, and also it's not always been with the best possible 11 for India in most of the cases. So I don't think it will be a fair way to take a call in terms of his captaincy, and something that we've discussed in the past, that nowadays captaincy it's not as straightforward to call, because you don't quite know how much of it is executing plan A, B, C, how much of it that you see from the ground, that okay, he's changed something and the next ball has resulted in something that's led to that dismissal. So with KL, I think even today, when you're playing only five bowling options, I don't think there is any room for you to do anything else. So sometimes we've seen in the past that even not just KL but other captains, that when you play, say when India play three spinners, you often see Paji will not don't take off. Paji, you see Akshar Patel not being used with the ball. There are times when even in the Bangladesh ODI series, we saw Sundar being used as a afterthought. So I think when you have more than one option, as in case with Hardik Pandya, you have 8, 9 options. That is when we are actually able to see your captaincy come through, because then we are able to see that what are the conditions, who are you going to, and when are you going to them, against which kind of matters. So that I think will tell a lot more about people. I think so far whatever KL has done, he's looked like he's done the basics fine. There will be some glaring errors here and there, which again people are going to go by the gut feel at times. But I think there is still time. The only thing that I don't want KL to be preoccupied with is his captaincy, because again I'm not insinuating or implying something that it's affecting his batting or keeping. I just hope he's able to separate those two entities and not let that affect, because you need him to both captain well but also bat and keep very well. Those are not, you don't have many people who can catch, keep
Bat.
bat well for a long period of time. So
True.
very 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 few in that regard.
Nikhil, you might not be insinuating anything, but Shaunak, who of course also shares name with our producer, I don't think this is our producer, but he also says the same thing. He sort of echoes Nikhil's thoughts, and with in that he says, KL, the player, after becoming captain, doesn't seem to have just as big an impact as he did when he played, as a non-captain, so to say. And he's not expecting too many runs from him. Wow, big words from you, Shaunak. Let's hope that isn't the case, for Indian fans' sake. I'm supposedly not one of them, so I shouldn't really count myself in. I just yeah. Sorry, Gurkirat, you can go.
Yeah, what Nikhil said, that he's usually done the basics right. In fact, even when there's a DRS discussion, KL's not someone who's overly emotional about nahi, nahi, lena hai, you have to take it. He's someone who consult everyone and then take a call. So that way he's been fine. And I felt one thing that I liked about his captaincy was that he wasn't fixated on keeping Bumrah's over 4 overs or 5 overs for the end. He realized that there's an opportunity to bring back Bumrah and try and sneak in a wicket. He did that, though he did not get the result, but it was still a good move. I've seen captains be too fixated with bowling their primary fast bowlers only in the last, their 4 or 5 overs only in the last 8 to 10 overs. And then what happens is, by the time that third or the fourth over comes, even the batters are able to predict what is going to come. And many times the game has drifted away. It has already gone out of grasp, where there's nothing left for that primary bowler to come and save. So, like that fact. But yes, when you have five bowlers, there's not much you can, go wrong about, because there's only a set pattern that you will have to stick it. You stick with it. You really can't do anything out of the ordinary. So yeah, which is why I wanted to mention that I like the fact that he had gone to Bumrah, even for a 2 over spell in between, because he realized that there's a need to take a wicket right now. If it comes well and good, if it doesn't, you still have to go with the best possible opportunity, best possible option, and he did that.
Yeah, and so just to add to your point about getting Bumrah back, I also feel it was also due to the conditions. I don't think the conditions were such that he wanted anybody to have a longer spell of more than 3 or 4 hours, which is why you saw how after the first spell, all three bowlers were on their haunches at a point of time that the heat weather was getting to them. So I think it was a very conscious and a good decision to ensure that you are giving them short and sharp balls so that they are also fresh and you are able to rotate and use them in different, because getting Shami to bowl in the middle overs is something that you will have to do. If you don't want to play Shardul, you have to use Shami in the middle overs and see what he does in that over. So, with that regard, happy to see that. Hopefully, we'll see more of it.
True, and in fact, that was actually going to be my next question. The only downside to playing five bowlers and having to sort of shepherd them properly and ensure no one bowls a too long a spell and exert themselves too much was that Shami had to be bowled in the middle and the death. Of course, it did come good for them today. He bowled. He did get the wickets. I was going to say he bowled well. Thankfully, yeah. Thankfully, stopped at the right place. But Ankar Biswas, meanwhile, he was happy with how Shami bowled. He says, felt Shami was bowling with a purpose and was steaming in with a point to prove. What do you make of that, Nikhil? Like I said, before, again, off air, I don't think Shami bowled too well at the death. And in fact, I was genuinely annoyed with Stoinis' dismissal. Like, how do you get out a straight length ball? It was there to be hit. I was expecting the ball to be dispatched somewhere near cow corner, deep mid wicket के पास
Yeah,
कहीं मिलेगा करके और भाई
I
साहब बोल्ड.
I expected the ball to land in Chandigarh from Mohali, but it is what it is.
उसने attempt भी वैसा ही किया. Unfortunately, he just played all over it. So yeah, Gurkirat, you can take this question. How would you rate Shami's spin and how do you think he bowled today?
So this isn't against Ankar Biswas or anything, but I sometimes really don't understand the cliches that are there. Bowling with the purpose. I mean, if there is no purpose, why you? Of course, you will bowl with the purpose. So these again, he bowled well in patches. Bowled well when he got the new ball and got that wicket of Mitchell Marsh. Then bowled a good delivery to Smith. At the death, again, I felt when he tried to bowl those Yorkers, it didn't work out for him. He got scooped. There were full tosses. Then that Stoinis wicket is something that I know even Shami knew. His expression said that he also knew that he got away with the slot, a ball in the slot, and then he figured that okay, Yorkers are not landing. I might as well use the larger square boundary and bowl slow into the pitch, because the pitch had that grip. So he had that smarts. And as long as I feel as a bowler, you can use whatever tools you have according to the conditions to your disposal, you've done a decent job. Yes, Yorker has never been his strength, and it's not going to become a go-to delivery or a strength for him just a few days before the World Cup. You have to work with what you have, and by and large, he did that. Yeah, and there will always be lucky wickets. Maybe you could say that the quota of luck from Shardul shifted to Shami today with that wicket, but that will always happen.
Absolutely. I mean, Pranav sort of echoing those thoughts, and yeah, I'll just take his comment. I didn't want to sort of use my head to come up with something to describe how Shami was at the death.
You
It
know,
was really.
you can replace Shami with Shardul, and all of this would still make sense.
True. Absolutely. And what was even, again, just like Ashwin, this stat also about Shami really sort of surprised me. This was Shami's just second fifer, his first one being the one against England in the 2019 World Cup. Good to see him get another fifer at the stroke of the 2023 World Cup. Hopefully, lots more to come during the World Cup as well. But going to the chase, 277 in 50 overs. Ruturaj Gaikwad and Shubman Gill in all likelihood to open for India. I don't see Gaikwad playing in the middle order. I hope that's not how they're looking at him right now. Nikhil, what do you think? Will India chase this? And if they are to chase, what's the template they should be using?
Yeah, I think they'll back themselves to chase this down. As I said, very keen to see whether there is a change in the basic nature of the deck, whether the ball with lights taking effect, whether it skids onto the bat better or it's still holding up. Then this is where Paji's point about having a set batter will become very, very crucial. More so in a chase, because you know in a chase it's not going to be easy for you to just take on the bowling if you lose two in an over. So on such decks, there are two things that you cannot afford: two new batters from both ends in towards the end, and one batter just not getting his I don't know, you would say it form or something, but you they're now that green plate. That is something that is you cannot afford, that you can't have a end stuck so much that the gap increases too much. So you'll have to be on par with the rate so that you're never too far behind, because then it will help you cover up for the second bit that I said, that if you have two new batters, but if the rate is still 5 or 6, you still have hope that you can catch up. But if you take too long to get into your rhythm to and then you get out without the acceleration, then you're going to leave a lot towards the end. But that is in the scenario that the pitch remains tacky. I'm hoping it won't be. I'm expecting them to start cautiously, because you have to take into consideration that Australia are playing two premier bowlers in Cummins and Zampa. There is Stoinis, there is Green, and they will all use the surface bowl into the deck, which is where I feel the game will be decided. How India play these three all rounders and how many overs they get, and whether they are able to get boundary balls from them, because then that will mean that they don't have a risk versus Zampa. And Cummins also doesn't always have. He's not the guy who'll take 3 for 30. Hopefully ऐसा नहीं होगा आज. बोल दिया तो कि you usually get him to try and some runs also come, but he also is able to take wickets.
Somesh is not there, so we shouldn't really worry about wickets.
नहीं मैं बोला you don't know. तो कवर
True,
किसी
true.
का एक हो जाएगा तो. Yeah.
But also, just to close it out, so Gurkirat, what do you think of India's batting order today? I mean, just to take Jaideep's question, who do you think will come in at what position? Because they've got what, Gaikwad, Gill, they've got in the
Gaikwad,
middle
Gill
order
to
plenty
open.
of options.
Gaikwad, Gill to open, Shreyas 3, Kishan 4, KL 5, and then the rest of. I mean, it's pretty much straightforward with Sky coming in at 6, Jadeja 7, Shardul 8, Ashwin 9. So it's not that India don't have batting depth today. So yeah, they should fancy themselves to chase it, even if the pitch remains tacky.
All right, you've heard both Nikhil and Gurkirat say that India will win. Just to be clear, I'll be explicit. I won't be diplomatic. I won't be diplomatic. मैं तो सीधा ही वो ऐसा क्या बोलते हैं भाई, clickbaity headline चाहिए ना. तो गुरकिरत और निखिल ने कहा इंडिया जीतेंगे. So let me play the devil's advocate. I'll support Anirudh Suresh. I'll be with him on the Australian.
Let me not play devil's advocate. Let me be me. Continue.
अरे भाई ये गलत है भाई, गलत है, ये चीटिंग करता है. Anyway, so yeah, let's see. We're up for a thrilling chase, that's for sure. 277 to be chased down. India, a new sort of a different 11 that they're playing with, a different batting unit that they're playing with, and unlike their typical batting lineup, they do have depth here. So it'll be very interesting to see how their batting goes about their business and how Australian bowlers fare in what is probably their first game, first ODI in the lead up to the World Cup. So yeah, a lot of interesting things to watch out for, and stay tuned for the review that'll happen at the end of the game. Hopefully that shouldn't be more than 3 hours away from now. Until then, that's it from us. Goodbye.